Hello and welcome to another game design exercise. This exercise is the language game. Not all of these exercises, even though they're design exercises, have to be about making or modifying something. Sometimes they're just about playing a game and then talking about it. So that's definitely what this one is. Like a lot of these exercises, this one comes from the rules we break. And this is a particularly good exercise for any kind of interaction design. Let's take a look at what we get out of this exercise. So what do we learn? We're going to learn about how limitations are really important in creating meaningful experiences for an audience. A little bit about freedom and constraint and balancing those kinds of things, and also about language as a field of play and meaning and how that can operate. Here's what we need for the exercise. This is just for 2 players. I like to run this exercise often in a classroom or a large group, and you can just ask for 2 volunteers to come and demonstrate. And it's quite short. It should take about 15 minutes, including the discussion. Okay, so as usual, what I'm going to do with this exercise is I am going to lead us through step by step as if you are running the exercise in a classroom or in an organization or with your project team. We're just going to take it step by step and see how it goes. So, okay, the first thing that you're going to do is that you're going to ask for a couple volunteers and have them come down and stand in front, or if you have a shy crowd, that's not even that necessary. You can just have them even stay in their seats, but we are just going to draw them as if they are coming out to stand in front of everybody. You you can tell them that they're going to be playing a very simple game, very low pressure, and there's nothing to be too worried about. Here's how I like to explain it when I'm playing it in, say, like a workshop situation. Okay, everybody, we're going to play a game, and I'm going to explain how it works step by step. We might not get it completely right the first time around, so thanks for your patience. And here's how it works. So first, thank you, both of you volunteers, for stepping up and agreeing to play. I'm going to give each of you a set of rules or guidelines to follow. And the first thing that you're going to do is that each of you two is going to alternate saying a single word. And then the only rule that you have to follow is that you can't repeat a word that's been said already by the other player. Okay, so let's try. So who knows how it's going to go? It might go something like this. I'm going to just get some little speech bubbles in front of our 2 players. So for example, maybe one player says, I don't know, game. And the other one responds by saying table. And then pencil. Or I don't know, werewolf. Coffee, right? So they're sort of saying things like maybe some things that they're seeing in the room, things that they're thinking about. After a few tries and everyone kind of gets the idea, just pause the game for a second. So that was step 1, just having them name any word. Now we are going to move on to step 2, where we're going to limit the domain of what they say. So again, this is how I like to explain it when I'm running the exercise. Okay, thanks. Thanks, volunteers. Again, thank you, players. That was a good start, but not really yet a fun game. I think we could all agree on that. So let's add a rule and see what happens. We're going to keep all of the rules that we had before. Both of you are going to alternate saying single words, and you can't repeat a word that's already been said, but we're going to add one more rule. Now, one of you mentioned coffee, so let's go with that. Let's make food and beverages the new rule. You can only say things that you can eat and drink. Fruits, vegetables, dishes, drinks. Ready? Let's go. So that's how I explain it. You don't have to go with food, of course. I always like sort of keying in on something that they said. The main thing is that it can't be too narrow. So something like colors, maybe there's not quite enough words there, but something like animals, for example, is a good broad domain. But let's go with food. So let's say that we did go with food in this example. So okay, they start talking. Maybe one of them says tea, coffee. Oh, there's our coffee again. All right, sandwich, pasta, tomato. Okay. Again, after a little bit of time, just pause it, and then we're going to move on to the next step, first and last letters. So at this point, that version of the game, the second version, may be actually less interesting than the first version. We're not there yet, but we've got one more step to go in modifying this exercise. So here's what I like to say for the how to introduce the last section. Okay, well, I think that last rule might have made the game less interesting than it was before, but that's not your fault. I'm sorry, players. That's not you. That's on me. I'm the designer. It's my responsibility to try and make this game fun. So we're going to try one more rule change and see what happens. We're going to keep all of the rules that we had so far. So you're going to alternate saying words. You can't repeat a word that's been said within the game. You can only say words that are food and beverages, or again, whatever content constraint you chose. And here's the new rule. After the first word is spoken, the last letter of that word needs to be the first letter of the next word. And the last letter of that word is going to be the first letter of the next word, and so on. Okay, are we ready? Let's try. All right, so now we're in for something a little bit different. Let's see how it goes. So let's say the first player, okay, oh, they're pulling out coffee. So they're really back to our classic coffee, but coffee ends with an E. So this player is starting to think. Are you starting to think about what it might be? What could go there? Okay, egg. We got an egg. All right, so this player's got egg. We've got a G here. This person is starting to think about what they want to do. Now, you should notice in the room what happens, right? So there should be a palpable difference in the feeling of the audience of people that are watching it and the players do. Suddenly, they're under a little bit of pressure to perform, right? They're actually given a challenging task now. And you might get people, I don't know, stretching the rules a little bit, like is greens really a name of a vegetable or more of a general term? But that's okay. We'll go back to sardines. We have an S, and now we have another S. So we're sort of multiplying the challenge here. You may even get them asking for help, people shouting suggestions. It's definitely going to be different this time around. So again, let them go back and forth several times. Don't make it too excruciating for them. And then pause the game again. Thank the volunteers. Always want to thank people that step up and help demonstrate something or participate in something. And then they can go back to their seats or wherever they were. And then that's the game. Now it's time to discuss. So then it's time to really talk about what just happened. So here's some possible kinds of things that we could talk about in this exercise. So first of all, be sure and highlight what changed, right? What actually happened in that last version when we moved from just naming any word and limiting the domain, but once we got to the first and last letters, something changed. And I bet that even you watching this video were starting to think yourself, okay, what's a word that could go here that begins with G or begins with S, that's still a food. Of course, I didn't invent this game. This is a folk game. I used to play it with my family traveling, and we would use names of cities and states and countries. But definitely it became a game. It became a real game that was sort of fun and enjoyable. Why is that? Well, one of the lessons I think of this exercise is constraints. So what we did as we moved through these steps is we successively limited what the players could do, right? Started naming any word, then sort of like tightening and tightening the restrictions. Now, what I think is interesting is that often when we think about video games, it seems like they are not about constraints. It seems like they're about freedom and power and going anywhere and being anyone and having super heroic powers that let you, change the world. But it may feel like that to players. But from the designer's point of view, actually making a game or making a sort of a meaningful interaction is often about constraints, the opposite. Let me give you an example of what I mean. So if we have these dice here, right? What are all the things that we could do with this dice? Like, there's so many things that we could do with these. We could juggle them. Okay, I'm gonna not embarrass myself by trying to juggle here. We could, I don't know, scoot them around. I could turn them into earrings. I don't know what we could do. Maybe like grind it down into some kind of powder and then, apply it like an ointment. I don't know what that would do with these dice, but there's a million things that we could do with these dice. But in a game, we do such a limited and narrow thing, right? We roll the dice, we count the numbers on top, and then we apply it to the game in a particular way. Maybe we move a piece on a board, or we add that total to our score. So anytime that we are designing interactivity, we are adding constraints. Now, more constraints is not always better. In this case, we were successively adding more constraints, but we could have continued to add. Like, we could have said, hey, it has to be exactly a 6-letter word. That probably would have been too many constraints, right? So we need to find that balance between freedom and constraint, right? So it's almost like a planet that can sustain life. It's sort of like within this very narrow range of giving just enough sort of limitations while you're also giving enough freedom so that players can be clever and be creative here. And I think that there's another really interesting and important lesson here about creativity, and that creativity often comes from constraints, right? That there is for example, I bet that people started creatively sort of bending or breaking the rules in the third version of the game, right? Because they were sort of forced to, even in this, this example, is greens really that? I don't know, could the S have become maybe skim milk, sort of going into the two-word arena, right? Or even the people asking for help or shouting out suggestions, if that happened in your example, all of this is sort of like soft, rule-breaking, rule bending, but it's also creativity, right? It's people within the system sort of learning how to, trying to work with it and work against it as they explore the constraints and take it to new places. And it's really a great lesson for anyone that's designing interaction or participation, whether we're talking about like design or art or writing or any kind of creative expression, or you're making an app, or working in an organization, basically how to design for people and how systems function, and how all of these sort of key ideas come together in this very simple game. I really love this exercise because it encapsulates some like incredibly important lessons about how to design interactivity and creativity in a very, very simple package that's super easy to understand. Again, this comes from the book, The Rules We Break. If I can find it inside the book, here it is, the language game, very short exercise with some different examples inside the book, and some suggestions on how to run it, and questions for discussion. As always, if you did end up using this exercise, let me know. I would love to hear about what worked, what didn't work, and how we can all improve these exercises and make them better. Thank you so much for watching.